Well, here's the thing. I'm aware that the movie has struck a chord with many people. I've seen it twice, and I have reservations about it. I am certainly not as much of a fan of it as some people are. It was a terrific interview, and I think they both spoke very honestly about the film. One of the things that was said is, Florian said, I didn't want to make it my story because, everybody has a version of this story. And, we do, and I do, with both my grandmother and my mother. And everybody will bring different things to the table. And when I was reviewing Relic, the Australian horror movie by Natalie Erica James, I said that I understand that my own personal experience may have played into that, but I found that film more emotionally devastating and moving than any film I have ever seen approaching the subject of dementia or Alzheimer's. And I still think that is the high watermark. And it was interesting that you mentioned towards the end of that interview that there are elements of horror or psychological thriller in The Father.
Yeah,
And
it was David Baddiel's
yes,
observation, which I was bringing. Yeah,
no, absolutely, and it's a correct observation. I think that actually, for me, Relic is the film that dares to go the whole hog, and dares to use the language of fantasy to actually address this very, very complex subject. And I also understand that everybody else's responses will be different. Here are my problems. I think that Hopkins is good, but I found the performance showy, very wordy, kind of stagey. Although that the film it's cinematic. I think absolutely huge plaudits to Peter Francis, the production designer, for the way in which the set subtly changes. Because on stage it was to do with taking furniture away, but on the production design is brilliant, and I think that Hopkins throws himself into the role, and I felt that I was watching a performance. I think that there is a general staginess about it that is clearly not bothering many other viewers, but did bother me. That for all the way in which the script has been intelligently reworked, it still felt that. And I think partly that's because it's wordy, and I think partly it's because it's kind of device laden. The other thing is that the film repeats something which is becoming something of a cinematic cliche, which is to do with that that dementia is often portrayed through a character whose mind was once, in inverted commas, exceptional, and somehow they talked about this great mind, this great character fallen, and somehow that makes the tragedy worse, and it doesn't. I mean, the thing about Alzheimer's is it affects everybody, and it doesn't matter what your starting point was. Every single story of it is is a journey and a tragedy, and I wish that cinema would embrace that a little bit more. So I think that I think it's an honestly made film. It is funny. I mean, if you just look at the trailer for Florida, which is the previous screen adaptation, which he said at one point, I think he put about one line from the film. It's a totally different film. I think the performances are good, but I confess that it left me emotionally cold. And I think part of the reason for that is that I was so knocked out by what Relic did, and Relic, incidentally, was completely ignored, overlooked by awards. This felt to me like awards fair, and of course, when Anthony Hopkins won the Oscar, and it was kind of a surprise because all the bookies had thought Chadwick Boseman. But when you look at it, you go, okay, well, actually, that kind of makes Oscar sense. And interesting, too, that you brought up Shadowlands, because for me, the reason that scene in Shadowlands is so powerful is because up until that point, everything has been constrained, completely constrained. And that scene is absolutely devastating. And I didn't feel the same way about the scene in The Father. So I don't think The Father is a bad film. I think The Father is a good, solidly made film. I don't get why it's affecting people quite the way it is, but I understand that it is, because I have heard people who have first-hand experience, as so many of us do, and it has touched them profoundly. It didn't with me.